happy Friday. I'm Kathy Grant, City of Lodi Watershed Program Coordinator. And my partner today is Dagmara.
Hi, my name is Dagmara Sani. I'm the PM3 for the City of Stockton. I'm responsible for managing the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System's stormwater permit. And I feel absolutely blessed that Kathy invited me to partner up with her on this presentation and for actually including me in the Salmon in the Classroom program. Thanks, Kathy.
Yeah. So what we're trying to convey today is the sort of the machine that operates behind this program, which comes down to a partnership of cities and agencies, and actually our San Joaquin County Office of Education, and then our local Delta Fly Fishing Club. And we've been doing this program for a few years now, so we kind of have most of the bugs worked out, but it's always changing, so we kind of evolve as we go. We use the California Department of Fish and Wildlife Salmon in the Classroom program as the bait towards teaching river stewardship, basically, which meets the permit requirements, while also at the same time sort of drawing the kids towards stewardship of the river. So could someone, Danny, you want to advance the slide, please? So the way we've broken down our talk today is to sort of peel an onion to look at the layers of involvement of the partnerships that we formed. And by the way, I've heard from our California Department of Fish and Wildlife lead that we're probably the only county in the entire state that has this sort of partnership going at so many different agencies at different levels working together, which is kind of been really fun and interesting. I do have to point out, if another one of those partners was telling the story, you would probably get a very different story. So I'm City of Lodi, Dagmar is the City of Stockton, so our needs are different, say, than a fishing club or even the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So this is Stormwater Awareness Week, and so this is how we use this program to meet our one of our stormwater requirements. We're always trying to educate, engage, and encourage and involve the public to participate in watershed advocacy and stewardship. And what better way to do it than to have our fishy friends be the watershed health ambassadors. So Dagmar is going to talk about, and this is sort of the kingpin to the whole system that we have going, which is the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So she'll kind of explain how they work, and then she'll toss me the onion and I'll peel the next layer. So go ahead, Dagmar. Next slide, please.
Thanks. The Classroom Aquarium Education Program is overseen by the State of California Department of Fish and Wildlife, who is required to issue permits to each of the individuals who wish to receive the bundle of 30 eggs or so. The workshops are offered for a training, and then you can see here that the mission statement, or the mission of the Fish and Wildlife Service, is to manage California's fish, wildlife, and plant populations and their habitats for their ecological values and for the use of the enjoyment of us, the public. The Classroom Aquarium Education Program is similar in that aspect. The mission of the program is to improve how teachers and students understand and appreciate fishes, while creating an awareness and needs of the aquatic environment through the use of classroom aquaria. This is accomplished by the Fish and Wildlife Service working and supporting the efforts locally for the local-based groups, and we do that by having these partnerships, these community partners who provide the teachers training and support, all sorts of support, including delivery of eggs, partners like myself from the City of Stockton, like Kathy from City of Lodi, partners like the Fish and Wildlife Service, the San Joaquin County Office of Education. We all work together to make sure that this program happens and that the mission of the Fish and Wildlife Service comes to life. Next slide, please. Let's see here. So now we're going to touch base on the history of the classroom aquarium education program. The program is found in many states besides California. In fact, the program first started in British Columbia back in the 70s. And then in California through, depending on the hatcheries in production, you could have different fish in your classrooms. In San Joaquin County here, we have the Mokelumne River Fish Hatchery where we get our fish from in Clements, and those are salmon. We get salmon eggs. So if you want to start your own salmon in the classroom program, reach out to your local Fish and Wildlife Service coordinator. Let's see, in the 80s, a group of educators established the first program in California. It started growing like crazy, and then it started to kind of level out, and it's still steadily just growing. You'd be surprised, well, at least I was surprised that the fly fishing clubs were a huge contributor to this program. I became a partner of this program about 2 years ago. Anyways, technologies have changed, methods have changed on how we run the programs, but everything else kind of remains the same, and the basic principles are there. Basically, the classroom receives de-eyed eggs from fish and wildlife hatcheries, and then the kids raise them, and then we release them to the appropriate bodies of water. That'll cover that. Next slide. Let's see here. So there are many different names that this program goes by. Here in the county, we refer to this as the classroom, the Salmon in the Classroom program. In 2000, Fish and Wildlife Service created a statewide committee to provide a greater support and assistance to the partners, and for it to continue to grow. And again, the fly fishing groups, huge contributors. Currently, this program is offered in many parts of the state. The species of fish do vary. You've got a numerous amount of species, but depending on where you are, depends on what species you have. And again, we've got salmon, and we call our program Salmon in the Classroom program. Next slide. Okay, let's see here. We're talking about why is a permit important. Well, the permit process is important for the benefit of the fish. The Fish and Wildlife Service conducts workshops to ensure that, you know, we follow protocols and that we make sure we meet their mission. Through a classroom experience of hatching live fish, the Classroom Aquarium Education program will introduce students to the value of aquatic environments, to the balance that must be created to maintain and protect and enhance the fisheries and aquatic habitats. And it'll also enable students to understand how their actions really affect this resource. So this program is regulated by the Fish and Wildlife Service to ensure that fish are only released in appropriate bodies of water, and so that they don't basically reduce the spread of disease and reduce mixing of genetic strains. Permits are good. Next slide, please. I think this one's your Kathy.
Okay, so this, we'll go quickly through these. We have a couple of slides just on the fish that we're dealing with here on our Mokelumne River, which I was very excited today, actually in an earlier meeting today. We learned that the Mokelumne River, which I don't know where my audience is from, but the Mokelumne River was San Joaquin County, which is in the Central Valley. Well, it is in the Central Valley. It's San Joaquin Valley. It's headwaters are up in the Sierra Nevada, flows across the valley, and it heads out into the delta, through the delta out to the Pacific Ocean. So Monday, October 3rd, the first pulse flows are going to be released from Comanche Reservoir, which is going to send down a surge of water through the Mokelumne River, and it will pass through the delta and on out to the ocean, and that will signal the salmon to return back and find their way to the Mokelumne. It's an exciting time, and so they'll pulse a couple more times throughout probably the next 6 weeks or so, 2 months, and then there's actually a camera that a gate camera gate that it's called the fish window, where the fish actually have to pass through, and it's recorded, video recorded live, and you can see these fish coming through. But it's a Chinook salmon, and just like it says, there's 5 different salmon, and we have one of the largest. It's androgynous, so it's a ocean. It lives born in freshwater, but it will head out to the saltwater and live there for a few years, and then return back. And it will be spawned at this Mokelumne River fish hatchery because that reservoir was built and they've lost their original spawning grounds. Slide, please. So this is the life cycle. This is what the kids would be learning in school. The teachers who bring the program into the classroom will drill the kids in all of this, and so they'll become little experts on this Mokelumne River Chinook salmon that are coming through. From my perspective, when I first did this in my office at the city, I work at the water plant where we actually take in surface water and treat it for City of Lodi drinking water. When I first started the program in Lodi, I decided to get a tank in my office so that I could actually watch and learn right along with what the teachers were doing in their classrooms. And so this is what you would see. The first picture is the eggs being, that's what's dropped into the kids' tank, into the the classroom fish tank, which is a super chilled water. It's about 55 degrees. So if you were to set up this tank yourself somewhere in a classroom or in your office, you would need to have a chiller. You'd need to insulate your tank with insulation material, foam or whatever you've got. And then once those eggs start hatching, then you can actually take it out of the dark. So the tank will be in the dark, in the cold, until the eggs hatch. And then you can see the second picture is what they look like. They're little fat-bellied. Alevin cannot swim. They all just hang out at the bottom of the tank, and it's kind of odd. I thought that fish don't swim right after they hatch. So by the time they absorb that nutrient belly, then they're looking like your number 4 there. And then that's when the par is actually when they start swimming, and the colors changing, and they start blending in with the kind of their background. But all of this would be covered by the teacher. It's not on the agency or on us to do that teaching. It's the teachers that are extending the information to the kids. And next slide, please. So I think this is yours. Are you going to take this one?
Sure. Let's see here. We're going to talk about some of the partnerships, Fish and Wildlife Service, Mokelumne River Fish Hatchery, Upper Mokelumne River. We've got City of Lodi, City of Stockton. Members of this team are like the wheelhouse on the ground. We're like the engine, the brain, the hands, the heart that makes the program happen, really. And this program is more than like 1 or 2 people can handle. Even if we were only focusing on one city, this program needs lots of people, lots of partners. The permits required, they have workshops, you need to build tanks, you need to bring the eggs, you need to then release the fish. All of this is done through the work of the partners. We work really hard to make sure that this happens for the children. And time and time again, I just want to say thank you, Kathy, for bringing me onto this partnership, because I absolutely love it. And I urge for those listening today to get involved. if you're responsible for your NPDES permit, you will receive credit for this. This is a great way to do public outreach, and this is a great way to make some pretty awesome friends. So next slide.
So I'm going to take this slide. This is from the student's perspective. So if you could imagine the team, whoever they are, whether it's Dagmar or myself, we've delivered the eggs to, we drive up to the hatchery, we pick up the bundles of eggs. We ourselves are permitted. We've gone through the training, so we're legally allowed to handle those eggs, and then we deliver them to all the individual classrooms. I think last year we had almost 30 classrooms throughout the county. So it was a major operation to drive up there, pick up all these bundles, keep track of the permits, get it to the classroom, keep them alive, and then, have the kids welcome the eggs drop them into the tank, and then teach the students a little bit. And how do I say this? The teacher begins to track the thermal units in the tank at that point to know when, or predict when those fish are going to hatch. And so there's a lot of math and science coming together here. So you can see on the left, those are the students receiving the eggs in the classroom. They're absolutely thrilled. And then the last couple of pictures there are back out at the river. The eggs need to go back to the natal river where those salmon, originally the parents came from, parent stock. That's what's required by law. For us here in Lodi and the rest of San Joaquin County, as part of this program, we also organize activities on that release day, and that's what you're seeing the kids doing. Is they'll rotate around stations where they will. One of them is releasing their fish. Another one's maybe going for a hike or doing some art. We'll have a watershed station so that they understand what a watershed is. We'll talk about riparian. What does that mean? We'll talk about the fish's habitat, and then the impact on these fish caused by us with our through stormwater runoff from cities, thermal pollution, all sorts of topics can get covered. This whole day is a circle of volunteer. They're people that we pulled from the different agencies that are delivering the program for the good of the kids. So we'll get about 2 busloads of kids a day. So we've got 60 kids rotating around these stations, and they basically spend time at the river. And many of them have never been to a river before. They don't even realize what the Mokelumne River looks like without a city around it. So it's really a good day to get the kids out. New slide, please. So resources. So a big part of our effort the rest of the year. So this, time with the tank in the classroom is only about 6 weeks, but the rest of the year we're working on what it takes to build a car, so to speak, before we actually have to drive it. So there's a little bit of a tally going on here. You can see what we had last year, about 42 schools for the whole county. 17 of those were in Lodi. I think 5 of them were actually in Stockton, not 3. It's more or less 2,000 students total. It's about $400 per tank up front, and then you can use the tank multiple years. Funding sources have been different for every city. City of Lodi, I write grants, watershed grants, and East Bay Mud has been very good about helping pay for a lot of that program. And then the Lodi Unified School District got a lot of COVID money, and they invested in these tanks. And the Delta fly fishers themselves also have given several $1,000s every year to keep these tanks going. So the money's out there. You just have to find your right partners. And then the other side of the slide are the resources that we put together for the good of the teachers. The first group, the Upper Mokelumne River Stewardship through Education organization, is actually in the Upper Mokelumne River watershed. So it's above the, I don't know, people probably don't know our river very well, but it's above the 2 major reservoirs that are on our river in the kind of up in the upland country. That is the group we are modeling what we're doing after. They've been doing their work for 25 years, and we're new. Probably only been at it for, City of Lodi's been at it for about 10 years. So we're just gradually increasing our program to where we can hit the mark where this upper watershed people are, and they do a really good job. They have activities, at the river. They're very rigorous in their tank training time, and they've got a curriculum and a great website, and that's all about there. And then we have come up with our own, down at the bottom there, Salmon Connection Resources, which is a Google Doc library, so to speak, that teachers can go in and out of and add to. And it's really been helpful for teachers to have that resource at their fingertips. And then the middle business there is the Meet Your Watershed. So the city of Lodi during COVID, we sort of adapted our program to become more virtual. So we started creating these Meet Your Watershed videos, actually with WGR. They have a film side of the house. They helped us create these videos. And I don't know, do we want to show that video now? I'm not sure, Rebecca, where you wanted to put it in, but it might be appropriate now because we could talk about how we encourage stewardship after that. So
awesome. I'll bring up the video real quick.
So remember, this is during COVID, so we look horrible with our masks on. It's like we look so dated. But it's a great video.
Let me know in the chat if you can hear this.
Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Kathy Grant, City of Lodi Watershed Program Coordinator, and today we have Michelle Workman from East Bay Mud. She's the Manager of Fisheries and Wildlife. What are we going to do today, Michelle?
Well, we're here at the Mokelumne River Hatchery, and this is where the Mokelumne River Chinook salmon begins and ends its life. So let's go take a look and see what they're doing. The Mokelumne River Hatchery was built in the 1960s along with the building of Comanche Dam. It was built to mitigate or make up for the lost habitat that was blocked when Comanche Dam was built. The facility is owned by East Bay Mud because we are responsible for blocking passage for fish, but it's operated by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife through a long-term cooperative agreement between the two agencies to make sure we're all working together to sustain the fish population. Part of the mission statement for East Bay Mud is to protect and be good stewards of the natural resources in which we're entrusted, and we take that very seriously. The Mokelumne River is home to a fall run of Chinook salmon, and what that means is in the fall, October, November, salmon come up into the Mokelumne River from the ocean to complete their life cycle. They come into the river, and some fish spawn in the river, but others are guided into the hatchery by a fish ladder. They're able to make it up the fish ladder into the hatchery building, where workers from the Department of Fish and Wildlife crowd them into the building. Once in the building, they can separate males and females for processing. And how they process them is to take the eggs from the female and take the milt from the male and combine those to fertilize the eggs. Once they've fertilized the eggs, they put them in an iodine bath to disinfect them to make sure that they have the best chance of survival. And then they're put up in egg stacks or egg jars to incubate. And there we wait for the juvenile fish to come out. So when a salmon hatches from its eggs, the cool thing about it is we like to say their mom packs a lunch for them. So when they hatch, they have a yolk sac attached to their body. They're called alevin. And so they don't need to eat like you or I. They have their lunch attached to their belly. So for a little bit of time, they're able to just get nutrients from that yolk sac, and they won't actually start eating food until they've completely absorbed that. So in the river, they would stay under the gravel in their nest while they absorb that yolk sac, because they're protected from predators and other dangers in the river while they're still absorbing that yolk sac and growing. Once they've eaten the whole yolk sac and they're bigger, then they swim up out of the gravel, and then they start looking for bugs to eat.
Oh, interesting. And so they'll stay in the river for a few months while they size up a little bit and then start moving downstream.
Yes, so salmon in the river, fall run in the Mokelumne River, only stay in the river during the first spring of their life. So if they hatch out in April, they might stay as late as June, but that's about it. But fish are leaving the whole time. So some of them choose to leave and go into the ocean as fry, or very small fish. Some of them stay in the river and eat and get big, and they don't go to the ocean until they're smolt.
Wow.
So they are leaving the whole time from January through June. They're always leaving the system. When a fish is spawning in the river, what we see is it's very easy for us as biologists to find a red because the female does a great job of cleaning the gravel in the river. The female will find a place that she thinks is a good place to build a nest. It has good water depth, it has good speed of water or velocity, so that keeps oxygen flowing over the eggs. Then she will turn her body sideways and slap her tail against those rocks. And when she does that, that cleans off all the little tiny bits and particles off of that rock. It cleans them all up. And then she'll move the bigger rocks out of the center, lay her eggs, have them fertilized by a male, and then she'll cover that mound back up. That protects those eggs when we talked about how they are going to be protected by that gravel environment. And then she'll stay and protect that nest until she ends her life protecting her babies until they hatch. So if you're able to come to the Mokelumne River, there's lots of really cool things going on here that you might see. You might see us spawning fish. You might also see we have people come from different facilities to collect the heads of those fish we've already spawned. So when these fish are little in the hatchery, they're given a tag in their snout. And when they come back as adults, we can remove that tag and we can find out how old that fish was, where it was released, when it was released, and then we'll know where it came back to, and that helps us to learn better ways to release the fish to get them to go where we want them to go. You might actually also even get to see the biggest fish of the season, which we were lucky enough to do on this day. And we got a 35-pound salmon at the Mokelumne River on this day. Thank you everyone for joining us today on this virtual tour of the Mokelumne River Fish Hatchery, which is a jewel of the Mokelumne River. I hope you do come sometime with your family. This is a COVID year, so it is not open to the public. But normally it is open most days, 7 days a week, unless it's a Christmas or New Year's holiday. It's a beautiful place, and we hope you come and learn more about the salmon and the world that they live in, start in, and end in. And thank you for joining us.
So yay, so that's one of our Meet Your Watershed. It's really fun to do that, but there's lots of other videos, by the way, if you're wanting to see that work. A new slide, please. So that video is what the teachers would use in the classroom to prepare them to accept the eggs in their tank. And then if they can't make it back to the river because of funding or whatever, then they have at least seen the video or seen the river through the video. That was our intention. So as from a permit requirement perspective, 6 weeks is how we bait these teachers. I basically will build a email list of the participating teachers, and I try not to bombard them, but I do continue to try to work with them throughout the years in all sorts of other events, and that's basically how I build. The City of Lodi builds our program. Every year it changes. It's not the same teachers, so it's to refresh those lists, and we can still measure what they do in our permit. So whatever you see listed here, coastal cleanup, there's lots of ways to extend it depending on what your resource, what your river, where you are on the coast or creek, but you would track their activity, or at least invite them to it and hope that they're doing it, and build your program. Next slide, please. So we put this slide in because instead of focusing on stormwater as pollution problem and all of that, our world, we really try to encourage the teachers to show them what ideal conditions look like in a river. And this is our goal. This is what we want our local waters to look like. And they would meet that in their tank. So they're learning about temperature, and they're learning about sediment, and they're measuring pH, and they're all doing all this monitoring in their own classroom. And then when they get out to the river, they can evaluate themselves what they're seeing. But most city kids don't think any of this, how do you say it, not naturally, but they're just not exposed to river and they don't think of rivers in this way. So that's what the tank does, is kind of introduce a river into the classroom. Next slide, please. And again, this is metrics. So we in the city of Lodi needed a way to track what kids were learning, and we wanted to create a record, and we wanted to use those students then to show the rest of our 65,000 people in town best we could what the kids have learned. So each year, once a year, we put out a Mokelumne Current watershed focused newspaper, and it's written by the kids. I think it's about 8 pages, and every year there's salmon stories. So the way this would work is teachers have had tanks in their classroom in January and February. They will release their fish to the river in March. They'll go on a 2-week spring break. They come back, and then that's when I start hitting them with, enticing them, I should say, to have collect, and hopefully they have collected some of their best student work, and then that's what's sifted a little bit and put into creating this newspaper. So our local Lodi News Sentinels has a person there who's passionate about doing this paper for the kids, and she does all the layout. And so the stories here in this paper are the rest of the story beyond the fish. So there's the Sandhill crane stories, it's the trips to the Ag Museum where they learned about agriculture in the watershed, and we had a fossil find in 2020 where they found mastodons and rhinoceros and horse and tapirs and all sorts of fossils. And so we actually just finished a second video on the fossil finds. We have 2 videos on fossil finds, and then it gets into the classroom. The videos get into the classroom, and then the kids, you can see, have been writing about studying volcanoes, because Mokelumne River was formed, actually, the paleo watershed was actually formed by a couple of volcanoes. So it's just keeps on going. The watershed stories keep on going. But anyway, there's a link down at the bottom if you want to see we've got 8 years now of these Mokelumne currents. They're paid for. I have to keep saying this, but the city doesn't pay for this work. We find sponsors. So this is our local Got Kids Foundation that pays for this newspaper. It's then delivered to all classrooms in Lodi, 2nd through 12th grade. There's a copy for every student, and it goes out to the public in their subscription as well. And then I hold back a couple thousand copies, and we use it at outreach events. So we're always promoting the watershed and meeting our permit requirement at the same time, and educating the public, because most people don't really think like a watershed. They don't really think about paleo watersheds or volcanoes or even salmon. So this is our tool. So that's all we got. Next slide, please. Yeah, so there's the big 35-pounder. So I'd love cameras to go on, and we've got some time. If anybody's got questions, I'd love to know who you are. I think my coworker's in there. I saw him. I don't know if he's still listening. But yeah, if you've got questions, we'd love to hear from you and encourage you. It's really a good program to engage our young people, and we follow them all the way through high school with programs and beyond.
Awesome. We have a question from Sarah, who said, very interesting. Do you have data about the success rate for the survival of fish that hatch in hatcheries versus in the river?
That's a Michelle Workman question. Yeah, it's not very many survive. So yeah, when you start looking at those numbers, there's a lot of predators out there, a lot of problems. So no, the survival rate's not.
And I think the idea behind this program is not necessarily to have the fish that came from the classroom survive, but it's to teach the kids about the whole process. More than likely, these fish that the kids release will not survive. The conditions are not ideal in that sense. But the process that they learn, you know, how the temperature that the water needs to be, the water quality aspects, that's kind of what we're after in this classroom program.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And I think every year that I've been with this program's been with me, I've learned more about just the whole salmon industry. In there's a lot more to it than I ever realized. These hatcheries are raising about 6 million eggs a year. And I think they put about 4,000 of those eggs out into the Delta. They put a couple of more thousand out directly. They shoot them off Barker Point, right straight out into the ocean. I think the Santa Cruz Pier, there's another drop site. And that's what is fueling the fishing industry. That's where your salmon from Costco or wherever your fresh caught salmon's coming from. It's those eggs raised at hatcheries that have been released out into the ocean. So the kids, whether or not the kids or hatchery survival rate, yeah. But Mokelumne has a really good record statewide. It's one of the best hatcheries, and they know it because of the way they each year they tweak it a little bit. They're very adaptive to whatever's going on in the world.
Perfect. Any more questions? Well, while we wait for any questions to come in, if you missed any of this workshop, if you were joining late, or if you had technical difficulties, you can find the recording of it on our website, which is stormwaterawareness.org, and that'll be available in the next 24 to 48 hours. And you can also watch all the other workshops that happened this week and our keynotes. We have one that features Moss Landing, and then we have one that features the Bay Area, the Carquinez Strait, and then Huntington Beach. So all three of those are available on our website. But doesn't look like we have any more questions. So thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Dagmar. This was really informative. It was great seeing your work and what you're teaching kids. It's awesome. Salmon are wonderful fish, and they're delicious and they're beautiful to watch. And our environment is so beautiful when they're in it. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, I just want to give one last plug for if there's anybody in the audience that would like to go through the required training by Fish and Wildlife in our area, San Joaquin County area. October 22nd, it's a Saturday. It's about a 4-hour training, and it's virtual. You would sign up, it's free, and you go through the workshop, and then that's how you would get your permit. And then you could go pick up your eggs and deliver it to a classroom, and off you go. It's a great program. So,
awesome. And if you have questions for that, I'm sure you can contact Kathy.
There's an email. Yep.
Awesome.
That's
well,
great.
Thank you so much. And thank you for participating in Stormwater Awareness Week. We hope to see you guys next year.
Yep. Thank you, Rebecca.